Hello, everyone. I am still Reverend Wendy Silvers, and I am so delighted that you are continuing this journey with us. We have these fabulous bonus speakers, and one of them this morning is Monique Leal. So I want to tell you a little bit about my experience with Monique. So I'm from the state of California, where there have been these egregious and outrageous bills that started actually in 2012 um, with regard to bodily autonomy, health freedom, medical freedom. And as somebody who's been actively engaged in counseling and coaching parents since, for 23 years and counting, I was pulled by a vision for freedom, bodily autonomy, parental rights, children's rights. So I've been very aware of what's happening globally, and then we had the pandemic. So I happened onto this page, nothing happens by accident, and it was called Independent Journalism. And I saw this woman, this mom, revealing information, evidential information from Canada. And I was like, I've got to connect with this woman. And so I have, and I am bringing her forward onto the stage to share with you her wisdom, her experience, her strength, and to invite you as a mom, as a woman who holds, the world in your hearts and your hands and your womb, to listen with an open ear and open mind and see where you are being called to take action. Let me tell you a little bit about Monique. She is a mother of two from Toronto, Canada, who has experienced firsthand the devastating effects of her government's overreach. She was unjustly separated from her daughters in Australia due to the harsh COVID mandates imposed on them and the country. Since then, she became a citizen journalist and activist in her country, fighting for our God given rights and for all children. She is also the founder of Moms Resist, a grassroots movement empowering moms in support of the restoration of parental consent and the defense of our children in Canada and abroad. So, very clearly, a soul sister with a very similar heart centered mission. Please put your hands together and help me welcome Monique Leal to the stage. And the crowd goes wild.
Thank you. Thank you for that beautiful introduction and for having me, Wendy.
You are so welcome. I'm so happy that you are here with us. I feel that you have a wealth of experience. There's something that happens in alchemically when you become a mom. And
Absolutely.
then there's some, right? And there's your relationship, or at least I can only speak for myself, but I see you shaking your head, so I think you agree. There's
Mhm.
something that happens that just transforms our relationship to the world, to our bodies. And then there's the stewarding of them through their life and making sure that they're healthy and well and free and have opportunities. So I would love for you to share with the listening audience what your experience was like when these mandates first happened and how you ended up in Australia. What happened to you when you landed in Australia?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. So, in about April of 2020, my daughters went out to Australia. That's where my ex husband resides, their dad. And it was about 1 week after they had gone that Australia shut down their international borders. So nobody was allowed in or out of Australia. As many of you may or may not be aware, Australia had very, very harsh restrictions. So even within their own country, they weren't allowed to cross state borders, and yeah, just really draconian measures. So I obviously, as a mom, panicked. I didn't know if and when I would see my children again. I didn't know how long this was going to go on for. And, naturally, I had to discover for myself and find out for myself what was going on and why. In the blink of an eye, the government could enforce this and separate me from my kids, where I didn't, there was no possible way that I could see them until things were lifted. So I delved into research, and I just discovered that what was going on did not make sense. It didn't add up. And usually when something doesn't make sense, it's not true. So I, started to research and read into things, and I knew very early on that this wasn't about health and that this was about control. It took me 8 months before I could get into Australia. So that required an exemption. And when I say exemption, it's just an exemption to be able to enter the country. So they just have to kind of vet you to make sure that,
The
you're,
Australian government.
that's
Okay.
right. That's right. But obviously there were very strict measures here in Canada as well.
Yeah.
So it was a battle on both sides. So I feel like Australia and Canada are two of the most affected countries in all of this. So, anyways, I finally got out to Australia with an exemption, and as soon as I got to the airport, we were put through bio screening, and then we were put into a line where we were put onto a bus and taken to an undisclosed location. And I had to spend 2 weeks in a quarantine facility in Australia. So the first time I actually did get to see my children, I was outside on a fresh air break that we were allowed to, obviously that was supervised by military and police. Um, I felt like a prisoner. I remember us being let out onto the rooftop, and everybody would just kind of walk in circles while we're being, monitored by police and military to make sure, I don't know, we don't try to escape. And I just remember observing it and thinking, what is going on here? What is
Hmm.
going on? And the girls, they were in school. I told them, come on over in an Uber, I'll pay for it. And they were down at the bottom, and I was leaning over the rooftop, and I was just waving at them. And I remember, um, they said to me, Mom, can't you just come down and give us a hug? And
Mm.
and and then all of a sudden a police officer approached them down below, and it was just I'm like yelling, just please let them stay. I haven't seen them in almost a year. So uh and then yeah, that it was the most it was just a crazy experience to have to be locked up, and you have to do whatever they tell you, whatever they ask of you. There's no, you're at the mercy of these people. And for what? A virus that had a 99.8%
Right. Recovery rate.
survival rate.
Yeah.
For that, like that is what we had to go through. The amount of money it costs to go there. I had to pay $3,600 just to be in that facility,
You
to see
did?
my,
You had to pay in the facility
yes, you had to pay for it.
and you were in that facility for 8 months, you said.
No, for 2 weeks, just two
Okay.
weeks. It was eight
And
months before I was able to get into the country. Yeah,
why?
exactly. Why? For what?
Okay.
The thing that really surprised me, Wendy, too, was this. I've done this twice. Okay, I did it once in Queensland, and I did it again in Sydney, right before they mandated the vaccines for travel. So I wanted to make sure that it got out there again before we were, fully restricted from seeing one another, because I obviously, my stance with the vaccine, and my kids also are not have the same stance as I do. So I remember calling downstairs and speaking to one of the mental health workers in the facility, and she disclosed to me that it didn't matter if you were vaccinated or not, you still had to do the facility. So like how did any of this make sense? It didn't. And it's awful what they did to people and to families. And this is just, one story, my story, out of millions and millions of people who were affected. And the most horrific ways. These are atrocities and crimes against humanity. And I know many people in those facilities. Anyone who was granted an exemption was there for just, you know, basic human reasons. They were there to attend their mother's funeral, or they were there to see their dying father in the hospital and hoped to God that they made it out of the facility before they could see them. You know, it was just gut wrenching stories, and what they did to people. It's just, you know, I'll never forget it. And I live with that lingering thought every single day that they could do it again. And they could do it again. It was that easy and that simple. And, you know, I also, not obviously, I don't want this to happen to me and my own children ever again, but I don't want anybody to have to go through this ever again as well. And when you realize how quickly the government can intervene and decide whether or not you can see your children or be with your children, you fight. So,
Yeah. It's, I listen to your story and I can feel like my gut gets so tight when I hear this, and my heart starts to constrict because I can't imagine being disallowed to see my children, like not be allowed. Like the government makes it impossible for me to be with my child. Like that, I just can't imagine. And then on top of that, the ability by the government officials, people that represent the government, to lock down, shut out, separate, isolate people, and that you have to pay for that on top of that inhumane treatment.
mm,
And I know Canada, I think Canada and Australia were two of the the most restricted
yeah.
places, and New York, California. And I wonder, are people even thinking about what happened? And I know you interviewed Vera Shurov, who's on my wish list, her and Vandana Shiva, and it strikes me that there are real parallels. But if you mention
Hmm.
that parallel, there's such an uproar. It's like an even more intense clapback
Hmm.
than just talking about the shots. Have you noticed that?
Absolutely. 100%. And Vera, you know, that's what she talks about. She is a
Ah,
Holocaust survivor, and she talks about the parallels of, you know, what happened and how it happened, because we always ask ourselves that question, you know, how could it have happened? Well, it started somewhere, and it started with the removal of, you know, just basic rights, and, you know, shutting down businesses, locking down people, um, you know, labeling a group of individuals as, you know, sick or carriers of disease, right? So,
vermin.
yeah. And, you know, and the people, there were people back then that enforced it. And just the same as today, like you spoke about, these officials that, you know, were enforcing this. So police and public health and doctors and nurses, and, you know, and the way they did that was with fear. It was fear back then, and it's fear now. They were able to convince people to be so scared of a group of people that they could actually act out in such horrific ways, and you know, retaliate. It's just, it's awful.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, yes, Vera is very vocal about that. She's actually coming here to Canada June 16th and 17th, um, for an event that I'm helping to organize. And, you know, so she's got that fantastic documentary that she's done, which
Yes.
is Never Again Is Now. And, you know, she's just going to spread her message and her word to Canadians, and to talk about how, you know, how this happened, and what she sees is very similar to what
That's
she
so great.
experienced.
So great. I often because my teaching is fundamentally based in universal principles, like my life and the application of them in everyday life. I often sit in contemplation about what is this here to teach me? What are the blessings in this mess? And sometimes it leaves me still in the question, still in the inquiry of what is this here to teach me, and what are the blessings in this mess? Because there were blessings. I mean, I'm able to be connected with you.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that rose up and said no. I have you thought about that
Oh,
for yourself?
absolutely. Well, there's been a silver lining, most definitely. And you talk about the blessings because, sometimes I question, why is this happening to me when I was going through this with the kids? But I realize now that if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I wouldn't have met the most incredible people that I've met, like Vera, like Christine Anderson, just our veterans. There's so many amazing people that I've got to meet um, during this journey. And it's really opened my eyes, and it's also, opened my heart as well. And just realizing, I think that we really are all one, we're connected, and, we have a purpose, and we know that this world can be a better place, and these people actually believe that they can make the world a better place. And they're incredible. They're incredible.
They are. That's so true. I remember at one of the first events that I helped organize, and I had speakers. I had Del Bigtree and Andy Wakefield and Dr. Rachel and Polly Tommy and a congressman and I'm trying. Oh gosh, and a number of other people. And I just remember the underlying motivation was helping the kids, making sure kids, because at that time it was the kids, and then it became the as I like to say, the lens was widened. It rippled out and it became everybody.
Yeah.
And I just remember meeting the people that were so vilified in the mainstream media, and I kept thinking, you haven't met these people, you haven't talked to these people, just like RFK Jr. running for president and him being marginalized and
Hmm.
it reduced and put. If you meet him, it's you everything that's being said is completely false.
Yeah. Well, and that's what mainstream media does, right? We're living in this world of cancel culture that if you don't, follow the current narrative that you're just, a bad person, you're an extremist, you're, you know,
Conspiracy theorist.
conspiracy theorist. Yeah. And they don't take the time to actually speak to people on this side and share their stories, and they don't want to. Right.
And then there's us, the moms. Permission to embody your influence, permission to step out and speak up and speak out, permission to really be part of the solution.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
will you say more about Moms Resist?
Sure. Yeah. So I actually, it was back in, I think, December, where I put a call out just to moms and said, moms willing to take a stand for their children, please
Mhm.
contact me and send me your email. And I just got flooded with hundreds and hundreds of emails. So we did. It's essentially just a grassroots organization, and it's mothers, women, concerned citizens that see the injustices that are occurring right now in healthcare, in the schools. The removal of parental consent is a huge one. Uh, that is being removed from us. The right to make decisions for our children, as we see fit, the best, you know, things that we want for our kids. It's just the government overreach is taking complete control over that. And we're seeing that in so many different ways. So we just decided to, create this this movement and to kind of mobilize and empower and gather women and moms in the defense of our children.
I love it. I don't know if you know that I founded an organization called Million Mamas Movement, and the tagline is "Mobilize the Mamas, Transform the World," and that it happened in 2012. So
Mm,
I'm so aligned with you about that, and have
yeah.
a real heart call to invite, infuse, inform, inspire mothers and others to really come together and recognize their sameness instead of the differences,
Hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
our world, it's just this constant and this, you know,
Mm,
of vitriol and attack. And 50, I believe the statistics are 51% of moms are just so stressed out with this
hmm.
burden and of being a parent, and then attempting to be economically empowered. And so it's really awesome that you are doing this and that you are mobilizing the mamas, because we get to shift the world. We get to shift the paradigm, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And it
Absolutely.
begins here.
100%. There's so much power that we have, and I think a lot of that is actually being is under attack. They're trying to take that away from us. And I think it's so important, just in history, we've been, like, just through the media and the internet and the magazines and the culture, we've been told to compete with one another,
Yes.
and we need to stop doing that and really support each other, and empower one another, because we're all kind of going through the same thing. And now more than ever, we need to come together. I think we all know intuitively, and as mothers, we have that intuition intuitively, that something is very wrong. And a lot of us, I know it's a very difficult journey. This hasn't been an easy journey for any of us. And there are times where we doubt ourselves, because of the attacks against us. There's many days where I'm just like, am I doing the right thing? Just kind of just that seed of doubt is planted in you. And that's why I think together as women and mothers, if we come together, we can really empower each other and lift each other up, know that we're not alone, that we're all going through it, and to trust that. We really need to trust that natural instinct, that little voice, telling us something is wrong, something is not right, and not, suppress that and not ignore it, because we all know deep down that something is wrong. Something is wrong. And we need to do something now before, they continue to take total control and remove us from the equation, because that's what they're trying to do. Even with this whole inclusivity thing as well, be nice and kind and inclusive. And if you're not, well, then, they can actually intervene at this point and say, well, we don't think you're doing the best thing for your child.
Yeah.
CAS can get involved and say, you're not being a good parent if you're not helping your child transition and that sort of thing. And we're seeing devastating effects. These things are irreversible in children. When the hormones and stuff can change the voice, that your voice will never be the same. They're mutilating, and really, I was watching a video today, Wendy. This is targeted at young girls. It's mostly women. This is an attack on females and mutilating them.
Mm.
And this stuff is just, it's irreversible. They say it is, it's not. So it's really scary. And I think, we as moms need to intervene. We cannot allow this to be put into our children's head, this confusion and this abuse. It's absolutely abuse. So
It's such a deep it's such deep waters to wade in. So as a parenting educator, I was trained in brain science, child development, And so I've been in this inquiry about what's happening. And so before giving children hormones before puberty to me seems short-sighted. Now, we both know as parents how strong children can be and how they can insist certain things and persist and demand
Mhm.
that they get what they want and be unrelenting. And I do feel there's got to be some sort of hard line. I
Yes.
can't imagine what it's like to wake up every day and feel like I'm in the wrong body. I imagine that is pretty torturous. And I also think, what are the cascading hormonal influences that are going through a child's system that has them? Because part of growing up is questioning and confusion. It's a high state. You're confused. Who am I? Who do I like? Who do I want to be with? It's part of the developmental stages.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yet, if you give a child hormone blockers before they've completed puberty, that's a whole different experience. And and then if you go into the gender reassignment, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, because I've had these conversations with myself, with other people. I just had it with another speaker on here about this perception about, are we trying to eliminate the naturally born feminine or the female? Like, feminine is a quality, so anyone can have feminine qualities, but the
Hmm.
female, a uterus, ovary, like that. And
Hmm.
so it is definitely worth having a conversation about, and
Yeah.
empowering parents to say to their kids, gosh, I get it, you're miserable, I get it, you feel tortured, I'm so sorry this is happening, and I want to make sure you know exactly what's happening, because you can't reverse this. Because a kid at 12 doesn't know, or 16 doesn't understand. We're women. We can look back at different parts of our lives and go, I wish I would have known what I know now.
Hmm.
And it's impossible to convey that to a child. So I know what you're talking about. A
Hmm.
child who's prepubescent or in puberty, it's their brain is not, it's not that they're not brilliant or insightful, but they can't possibly comprehend
Right.
the implications of that.
Absolutely.
And so I feel like the parents need support, and I feel like the kids need support.
Hmm.
So on one hand, I think, okay, throughout history we have had, this is not a bad thing.
Hmm.
But when it becomes so widespread in terms of marketing,
Hmm.
the thing that I always go back to, which I know you do too, is follow the money.
Hmm.
Are
Absolutely.
we in, right? Are we encouraging natural curiosity? Natural, if you're gay, you're gay. If you're, if that's how you came into the world, that's how you came into the world. You're not evil.
Hmm.
You're lovable.
Yeah.
If you've already transitioned, you shouldn't have your life threatened.
Hmm.
That shouldn't be part of the equation. But I want to understand why there's this explosion. That's
Hmm.
what I want to address that, which
Well,
is what
we
you're
know,
speaking to.
yeah, we know plastic surgeons make an obscene amount of money, and now they're just going to be making even more with kids and these surgeries, right?
Yeah.
There and also just the medication as well.
Yes,
So
that's what
yeah.
I saw, the numbers. I mean, this guarantees that your child will be on
Hmm.
pharmaceuticals their entire life.
Their entire life, exactly. They want people sick. They don't want people healthy. They want people sick, and they want people dependent on pharmaceuticals. And we're seeing that everywhere. I mean, look at the vaccine. These pharmaceutical companies have made trillions of dollars on a ineffective, harmful vaccine. Ineffective. Like I just don't understand where people's logic is. It's not effective. Like that should be the number one thing that stops people from going and getting this, you know?
Yeah.
So
Did you see? The CDC announced yesterday, I believe it was, that now unvaccinated people only need one shot.
It's just it's honestly, this is psychological warfare as well. There's just so much confusion and
Yeah.
information. You know, one minute our prime minister is telling people that they can't get on a train. You know, nobody wants to be beside an unvaccinated person. That
Oh,
people choosing to be unvaccinated are likely misogynists, extremists. We had a mainstream media uh, news place put an article out that the unvaccinated don't deserve health care. We should just let them die. That was literally on the front page of a newspaper here. So,
mm,
you know, it's absolutely awful that, you know, one minute our government is saying all of this, and now he's saying, oh, we had a choice. Nobody was forced into doing it, despite them saying, you know, you couldn't travel or you couldn't work. You know, all across Canada, these vaccines were mandated for all different types of job sectors. So it is absolutely, it's gaslighting, it's confusion. You know, one minute you're being told one thing, the next you're being told something else. Um, but that's why it's so important for people to research themselves and look for the information themselves, because people just blindly trusted the government and the people that they, you know, in their past were told to trust, like law enforcement, like doctors, like nurses. And we're seeing today that many of us were lied to by the people that we were supposed to trust the most, the people that were supposed to protect us.
yeah. Yeah. So true. And I know I want to talk to you. And so I think I'm gonna talk to you about being on my podcast because I want to go deeper into this
Yeah.
in terms of Trudeau being part of the Young Leaders Association from World Economic Forum. So we could have like a whole deep dive. I want to thank you for your time today, for the work that you're doing. You have lived into permission to embody your influence with all that you are doing, and you are creating a powerful legacy with the work with Moms Resist, with independent journalism. And I thank you for your courage and your willingness to be out there and share this information so freely and consistently.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wendy. It was an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for everything you're doing as well.
Thank you. Well, joining arms over, dissolving any borders. I'm here to collaborate and support and help bring more love into this more consciousness, more love, more freedom. When we have moms that are standing up and doing the work that you're doing, it's mm, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank
I
you.
will make sure that everyone, you will have ways to connect with Monique so that you can stay informed, you can stay involved, you can stay inspired, because we need you. We need you, and your kids need you, and your country needs you, and the world needs you to come alive and embody your influence. And when you do, you create a powerful legacy. So as I bring this particular conversation to a close, I thank you, Monique. Thank you for being here,
Thank you.
and everyone that is here with us this morning, this day, this afternoon, wherever you are in this great big world. I invite you to remember these three things. You are powerful beyond measure, loved beyond description, and a force for good in the world. So go forth and spread your magic. Do not let anyone tell you that you are not valuable and important, because you are. And I look forward to connecting with you very soon. And stay well, stay free, stay brave. Thank you for being here.